I think all of that's very valuable, the table read especially, but I think one of the most important things, as Chris was talking about, is to see it ahead of time as well. So pre-visualization is something that a lot of people are skipping now, and they shouldn't be. And I know we've talked about that subject before, but proper previs changes everything.
Oh yeah, that too. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hired a sketch comedy group to read one of my screenplays live in front of an audience. And that was amazing on multiple levels.
Well,
Again,
I bet you got lots. I bet you that informed you very well.
Oh, it was absolutely brilliant. It was very, very good. So the thing is, I don't understand why people wouldn't use these tools. They're simple to get, they're cheap, just to find out how well what you've done is going to work. I don't know whether it's fear or whatever, but I mean, the more prep you do on every front, the better.
Well, and that kind of feeds into our main topic today, because Zachary Levi called out Hollywood and called what they put out garbage, and urges movie watchers not to watch crappy films. Studios don't care enough to actually make great. So that kind of goes right in hand with what we're talking about right now. So I'm going to jump right into that topic, because I think what you're talking about is probably one of the big problems, especially when it comes to like Marvel films, as we hear that they are changed endlessly until they hit theaters. And the same can be said for some of the Star Wars features, considering Rogue One had major reshoots. The Han Solo movie was shooting for 88 days.
And how much better did that movie become?
Exactly. Yeah, I still want to see the Lord and Miller cut, actually.
Yeah.
Chris, you were about to say something?
No. I was agree. Like look at the behind the scenes chaos of Lucasfilm. And this is just what we know about.
Right.
I promised you, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think there's a lot of fire there.
And I don't want to insinuate that chaos necessarily means you're going to put out a bad product. I mean, look at some of the most famous films in history had tumultuous productions. Godfather, Jaws, tons of them have. The original Star Wars.
But there was someone at the helm guiding it who was a creative. And all the cases you mentioned, Godfather, Coppola, you've got Spielberg with, Jaws, and Lucas with Star Wars, the first Star Wars, which nearly killed him physically. I mean, he was hospitalized.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's what's sort of this has crept in where, the executives having more power than the creatives, and the ones where the creatives who do have creative power, or at least some semblance of it, people like a Christopher Nolan, not going to say that everything he puts out is, amazing, but, I'm more interested in I'd rather see a bad Christopher Nolan movie than say a good, a good,
typical movie we've seen a million times already.
Like,
hey, Paulie, Latino slant prep means time.
I was just going to say, this is a great quote here, what he's saying. And this is true. And that kind of feeds right into this. And I think that COVID and other things have changed, or the lockdowns, whatever you want to call it. Because I think they got in the way of studios. If they do more of these table reads and prep more, we wouldn't have these stories coming out about Marvel films all the time.
You can do a table read over Zoom. I mean,
exactly.
The technology is there. It's not difficult to learn a little bit more. Get, push your screenplay a little bit closer to the finish line. The tools are there. It's not hard.
Yeah, but with the assignment side of stuff, especially on Disney, it's a completely different beast, because with the assignment stuff, does the script meet the parameters of what the assignment is required? If it does, good, we're happy with it. With a spec script, going into like Chris's My Big Fat Independent Movie, that is of a value. You invested in that script because you thought it was great, and you got to filming, and you're like, okay, now we're into our next step. What can we do in the next part to make sure that this is actually the best thing we can actually put out there? That required a recut, trimming, editing, what have you. That's all really, really important from the spec side of things, because you're dealing with something that is mostly unknown. With the assignment side of things, you've got all this data being fed into with regards to the IP, its brand stability, how well it can be marketed, and then checking the boxes that the studios who are writing the checks want checked. And so that pulls it away. So even with a table read, which is still very valuable, If everybody in the room is like, nope, this is exactly what we want, we're going to do it this way, you're not really going to get any improvements, especially if the powers that be that ordered the assignment and got what they want in the script are just basically fart sniffing at this point. They're hearing the words that they liked, they already greenlit. They don't care anymore. They're not looking to make it better. They're just looking for affirmation.
They're not really invested in the actual product. They're invested in what the end product will bring them. It seems to be. You don't have the directors who are really obsessive about their features anymore, other than your Nolans and your other ones who are not making mainstream films. But we have Andre joining us again because he probably doesn't trust me on my own.
No, I trust you completely, but I missed the bus and with style. So I figured that
you missed the bus with style.
Frying in the sun, waiting with not an ounce of shadow in sight, I might as well call in and chime in. I heard you talking about table reads and the important about that. And that actually reminded me of two things. One of the greatest authors of all time, Robert E. Howard, creator of Conan. You know what he did? He was considered a weirdo because he would, as he was typing, he would read out all of his books aloud as he was reading them. Because that way,
that was
heard if it, yeah, that too. But that way, he heard if it worked or if it didn't.
It's the absolute best way to check on a creative product.
We're getting really bad echo from your side here.
Is that me?
That's Andre. Let me. Okay.
Well, I apologize for the bus stop not being the ideal recording condition, but and also actually I do something similar myself. Like whenever I write the script, it's when I read it out loud the first time. That's when the final rewrite happens. That's when I know what works and what doesn't.
My trick is to read my scripts to my wife, who doesn't like anything, and that really bolsters my confidence.
You get really worried if she does.
Laugh. If she does laugh,
yeah,
I have found historically it is killer.
I know I was being facetious.
No, but it's one of those weird things where anything I've told her that actually made her laugh was a guaranteed hit idea.
Yeah, you've said that before. That's why I said the other thing, just to.
But
hopefully you play along.
Of those.
Yeah. But yeah, actually, that got us into our main topic here, because I think it's more than just that. There's a lot more to it than that. As I was saying, I feel like we haven't had directors outside of the few auteurs that are still around, Tarantino's, Nolan's, who are invested in their films. The one thing that all three directors we just mentioned earlier, you count Casablanca, the script through in there too, even though that was way before the era that we were talking, it still, I think, counts in a sense that, even Coppola, who didn't want to make The Godfather, he eventually realized what it was and he got all on board. And that's the thing I feel like is when you got J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, these kind of guys making these kind of movies, of course they don't give a shit about this. This is just a stepping stone for them, right? Like, even in a way you could say that it was the same thing for Batman with Nolan, but at least Nolan is a decent filmmaker. I think what we're seeing is that unless these guys are decent filmmakers, they're not going to be able to make these decent movies, even if they are like a Shazam 2 or whatever. So let's get into real quick what Zach said here, his full quote anyway, before we get too far. He goes, "I personally feel the amount of content that comes out of Hollywood is garbage, that they don't care enough to actually make it great for you guys. They don't." Levy says, is it Levy or Levy? I never know.
It's technically Zach Levy, but I think he goes by Levi.
I was going to say it's spelled like Levi jeans, so that's why I always used to say Levi. But anyway, how many times do you watch a trailer and go, oh my God, that looks so cool, and then you go to the movie and it's like, this was what I get? They know once you've already bought the ticket, you're in the seat, they've got your money. The only way for us to change any of this is not to go to this garbage. We have to actively not choose the garbage. It'll help a lot. It's funny he's saying this shit, because this sounds exactly like us, right? We've been saying this for a while. And it seemed like this year we had Hollywood on the ropes up until Barbie and Oppenheimer. But I'm kind of glad to hear him say this, because he's from the inside of that. He's from inside of that world. So if he's saying this, then it's clearly, not just us being conspiracy theorists or anything like that. They genuinely don't care. Like we always say, as soon as they get our money for our ticket, that's all that matters. It's just a big fucking, charade to get us in the door. So what do you guys say to that script? Let's start with, or actually, Andre, let's start with you since we don't know if we'll lose you or not. What's your feelings on Zach's quote here?
Well, he's not wrong, is he?
No, like I said,
No, like
And also what he's saying, that echoes kind of what Doug Bradley, the original Pinhead, said before. Only he was speaking specifically about the Weinsteins, but it's true across Hollywood, I guess. So it's easy to attack him, but he's not wrong.
Chris.
I like what Zachary Levi is saying. He's basically saying, look, the quality is piss poor. And, I've always said there's no excuse for anyone in Hollywood to fail. You have all the resources. You have the talent at the top of their game in every department, whether it's wardrobe, makeup, director of photography. You also have money. Even the lowest budget Hollywood thing is a much better, bigger, and more expansive budget than, say, an independent film. There's no excuse. There really is no excuse. I think it's weakness in middle management and management at the top. It's a Bob Iger not having the balls to say, Kathleen Kennedy, thank you, but we think we can do better with the Star Wars brand, and I'm going to find someone to do that who understands it. But I think that Bob Iger has been exposed as not the brilliant person that people, I think a lot of times people kind of like they sort of, put impressions of what they think about people onto them that don't actually reflect the real person. Most of these people are morons who don't know what they're doing. And the smart ones are willing to admit that, the smart ones are willing to, even the most successfully creative people that, like Spielberg and Lucas, if you know anything about the behind the scenes of their films, they were kind of guessing at things or going with instinct or trying things that worked and didn't work. And
Scorsese.
Scorsese, they were all like, they question themselves. And whenever I see anyone super overconfident, I don't trust that person because they have a lack of self-awareness. So Bob Iger is going to leave the Disney company hobbled, probably parts of it sold to Apple. And he's going to be selling off bits of the franchise to other, all these other places. You're probably going to see like a Marvel or a Star Wars sold or go off to somewhere else, his biggest accomplishment was buying these brands, but buying them isn't shepherding them and making them successful. So
he basically bought a bunch of steakhouses and turned them into McDonald's.
That's exactly right. Think about it. Like it's really disheartening to see, especially because, Marvel and Star Wars are very, that's why we're here having this conversation. But Zachary is correct. The overall general quality has been much reduced. And I think part of that is a mentoring. You'd see, and Paul and Script, you'll probably remember this. You guys all know this. They would take like an actor they're trying to build up, like a Sandra Bullock before she was actually Sandra Bullock, and have her do some cheesy, low-budget comedy. Maybe a romantic comedy was always the safe genre. You make it under a certain amount. It's basically a tryout for an actor you're trying to build.
That or a horror film,
That or a horror film, you're right. And you do a low-budget studio movie with a safe genre with a group of actors you're trying to build up. You're investing in their brand and you're building them up instead of plucking them out of obscurity and suddenly making Rachel Zegler a star when she has just completely lacks any maturity
or charisma
or even knowledge of what has come before. It's important that you have a respect, I believe, for what has come before. And her disparaging of Snow White, which has been all over the place, is just disgusting. I see as Zachary Levi, whatever you think about the success of the Shazam films, I thought the first one was very fun. The second one we probably didn't need. And what should have happened is Black Adam should have actually been in Shazam Part 2. Black Adam should have been straight up villain.
Yeah.
You know,
Black Adam should have been Black Adam and not The Rock pretending to be a superhero.
Right, exactly. He wanted to
You
make
just
him
can't smell what The Rock is cooking.
well, precisely. But he wanted to be the protagonist, but it just would have been more interesting to have The Rock play a villain in the second Shazam. But I don't know how much we care about it. I do think as much as people want to like dismiss the term superhero fatigue, it exists. The audiences are, you look at the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which will end up being, Oppenheimer is currently number 10. It's surpassed it. Look up the top grossing R-rated films of all time. Number 1 is Joker at about $1.074 billion. And Oppenheimer's number 10. I'm going to guess after this weekend it's creeping up. Might end
Which
up at number 5.
is kind of funny because nobody's really talking so much about Oppenheimer. It's all Barbie, 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 Barbie. But you're right, Chris. And even though I will fully admit that the only reason Oppenheimer's doing this well is because of Barbie, but I still feel like it's being overlooked. Same thing with Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom's getting close to $200 million.
Sound of Freedom, theatrical, domestic, surpassed Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Look it up. And the fact that this movie's been hyper politicized is ridiculous. I've seen some other critics review it and say, well, I didn't like it, but it's not this political QAnon thing.
Oh, yeah. Finally, a month and almost a half after the fact, Chris, before you got here this morning, that's one of the things we were talking about when I said earlier we brought up Sound of Freedom, is because finally, after all this time, Variety finally has a headline against all the other headlines that Variety and the other papers have had for the last month, claiming this was a QAnon conspiracy. They finally have something to the opposite effect. It's like, yeah, now that the movie's done played its role, now you'll admit that you're full of shit. But anyway, that being said, no, I think that feeds right into the whole idea that Hollywood is full of shit. And I think you said a very important thing there, Chris, and that is they have no excuses anymore. Right.
Well,
this is not like it used to be, to where the things that were holding them back was you either can spend, a couple $1 million on one special effect, or you can do these other 3 things. They don't have that anymore. It's all done with a computer. So it all costs the same no matter what it is. So that's, to me, is where you have no excuse. You should be able to make the greatest movie of all time, and you can't. What's your excuse? Like,
well, that's exactly right. That's my point, is there's no excuse to be this level. Look, there's always going to be bad movies. Okay. Bad movies for me usually translate into fun. If I could recommend one.
Yeah. I like inadvertently bad movies. That's
there's one starring Casper Van Dien. Look up the trailer for this. It's called Mad Heidi. It was made from a Kickstarter. It was released theatrically. It just came out digital. I think the Blu-ray is coming out. And they call it a Swissploitation movie. There's nudity, sex, hyper violence. It's Casper Van Dien's this totalitarian dictator obsessed with cheese, and he's going after anyone who's lactose intolerant. It's the weirdest, dumbest, hyper violent 90-minute, super fun. The lead actress is like Ray, but she'll take her top off. It's fantastic. Such a good film. And it's a serious recommendation. And you see like her start from this meek girl. It becomes like a women in prison movie for like the first third. Then she gets out and she trains herself to get revenge on the dictator.
Well, that sounds great.
That is responsible for the murder of her boyfriend, who you see naked in the first scene in the movie. But yeah, Andre talked about this movie, says Natasha.
Yeah. What was the name of it again?
It's called Mad Heidi.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think he has. Yeah.
But it was released theatrically. There's a lot of these smaller films, but I believe and that movie, my expectation, it's a small indie movie made with a Kickstarter. Yes, there are parts, it's ridiculous, roll your eyes dialogue, whatever. Had a great time watching that film.
But on that note, like, we're living in a world where Hollywood couldn't even make the movie Cocaine Bear entertaining.
Right. I mean, it's like you got it right. That's why like RRR was such a big thing for me last year, is like, hey, this is a Hollywood movie. This is it's got its music, it's romance. That's the one thing. I was at Anime Matsuri. I was watching the Simpcast panel. With Gary Beekler from Nerdrotic, and we're sitting there. And one of the big things that came up is what's missing from modern movies, because obviously they were talking about
Fun.
Snow White, and it was, well, fun is one, but the other thing is Brittany Venti said romance.
Yep.
She misses
Yep.
going to movies and seeing romance. What is Snow White? Romance is not the thing in that movie, but it's a big
It's a
part of
big
it.
part of it.
And to cut out romance, what is, you know what? And there's a really good, I recommend this.
Barbie doesn't have any romance in it either.
Barbie doesn't have romance either. You'd think it would, but so like, yeah, there's I don't know if you're familiar with a YouTuber named Comic Book Girl 19, Danica.
Yes, sounds familiar. Yeah.
Love her, always loved her stuff, her content. She did a review of Barbenheimer where she basically talks about Oppenheimer for the first 15 minutes and then the rest of it's Barbie. She does a rant at the end about the division that's being pushed between men and women. And she does this defense of men, and why can't we just, the sexes just be different but complementary? It is one of the best rants. I might actually show a clip from it on my Wednesday show and talk about it. And she's a lone person saying this, but I personally believe that her sentiment is felt by a lot of people right now. That you go to it's almost, and that was the first thing. Yeah, Dr. Coffin nails. Romance is a tool of the patriarchy. But that was the one thing I noticed. The first thing I noticed, I remember coming out of Force Awakens and saying, there's no romance.
No.
Well, romance doesn't necessarily have to be love either. Like, there is no romance left in the movies, period.
No, that is a big part. And also women being feminine, sexy women. They've certainly sexualized men. Men have been sexualized. I'm all about it. It's fine. Equal. Let's have real equality. You can have Chris Hemsworth and rip it off and see his ass in a film. Fine. But let's be a little even here. Let's be even-handed when it comes to sexy. The girl boss thing, I think, is played out. Everyone is so tired of it. That was the big theme of this Simpcast panel that was at Anime Matsuri. I recommend. I do believe that Chrissy Mayer shot it, and it is.
I think it was up on the
channel.
thing.
But really good group of women just speaking frankly about all this nonsense. And I always appreciate getting a woman's opinion on this. They see things a little bit differently, see things that we miss, our blind spots. So
it only counts when a guy has the woman's opinion, Chris.
Right. That's what is sort of annoying, right? That's what's annoying. But no, it's the Danica rant. Her rant on Comic Book Girl 19, that last 10 minutes is just crazy. She lays out like what's been happening, how this isn't good, how she appreciates men in her life that have taught her things and helped her because she can't do everything. And she goes on this great rant of like people in leadership positions are usually psychopaths. And she quotes a couple books that she recommends, which I plan on reading these books. About like people in certain types of leadership positions are usually people that are freaking crazy because they're attracted to power, mainly talking about high-level executives and politicians.
Yeah, sociopaths.
Right, sociopaths. That's right, Paul. So anyways, but Zach is correct. It's so hard for like an actors to kind of speak their minds of late, and even writers just be honest. We saw what happened to Stephen Amell. 1 minute he makes what I thought was a completely innocent comment. He's allowed to speak his mind. It's not it shouldn't be a hive mind. It should be a conversation. And suddenly you see him walking he was holding the strike sign, walking the line, towing the line. It was kind of sad to see.
Well, and that's kind of what it is like in Hollywood. It seems like if you don't follow the mind think, you're going to get ousted. But Paul, so what's your reaction to these?
So some of the talking to some of the things that Chris mentioned. First of all, one of the reasons I think anime continues to be popular is that there are characters, male and female, who literally adore each other. Now, anime does it in this weird kind of touch me, don't touch me, show a little side boob kind of way. There's
a kind of this weird Saturday afternoon soap opera element.
Yeah, but they adore each other. And I think when was the last time you saw a movie where a man and a woman just plain adored each other? And I can't remember what modern movie we've had that
Can't think
there's
of it.
and I think we need that. I think people react really, really well to two people just
I didn't watch
absolutely.
Wednesday. How did Morticia and Gomez act? Because those
No,
are always
they were
They were
bad
barely
casting.
together in most of the
oh, for
series.
crying out loud. See, now those are two that I think of
Yeah.
when if you think ultimate romance,
Well,
it's like
before you
yeah,
go on
but he
your
was
rant there,
badly
Tom, of
cast.
something you didn't
I
watch
wasn't
yet,
gonna
let me
go.
elaborate with the fact that they were barely in it, but when they were in it, you believed that they loved each other.
Yes, although I didn't think it was well cast.
No, I mean visually it was well cast, but again, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Luis Guzman does not have the voice to
No.
be Gomez. If they dubbed him with someone else,
Yes, that would have been
that
good.
would have worked. Yeah.
So as far as what Zachary is saying, this dovetails with the video I'm trying to produce, but this stupid show is interrupting me. Excuse me. I'm almost done. Where as a Canadian, to me, it was very interesting where we could never compete with Hollywood. But now modern Hollywood can't even compete with old Hollywood. And that, to me, is an interesting revelation in that I don't care about any of the new actors, the Rachel Zieglers. I mean, are they ever going to be a star? No. So there's almost nobody out of the modern cohort of children who have emanated out of from the movies am I interested in. And you go back to an old Johnny Carson show and you've got these drunken bastards on the show, the Frank Sinatras and anyway, Louis Nye, Dean Martins, all that, and they're just having a great old guys time. So it reminds you of the good old boys club days of Hollywood. And I'm not suggesting that we go back to that, but Hollywood has, doesn't know how to have fun anymore. And all these pictures have got, in Disney's case, we have now learned that they literally look for check boxes in the script. Okay, you've said this, and this is the kind of character that you've got in it. I don't know how you can make a movie like that, because we were talking about table reading. As a creative person, what you're trying to do is mitigate risk at every single level. You try to write the script to the best of your ability. You cast it to the best of your ability. The entire situation is filled with nothing but accidents and impediments. Just looking up when oh God, the director who just died.
Friedkin.
Yeah. Friedkin. I heard him talk about the French Connection. He was arguing nonstop with Gene Hackman because Gene Hackman was uncomfortable playing the role of an unbelievably foul-mouthed, racist individual. He hated doing this character. So Friedkin was constantly fighting him to try to play the character the way he was supposed to. And then the other piece of that puzzle, I don't know if you realize this, but he asked the casting guy to go out to get this French guy from a French foreign film that he loved to play the bad guy, the drug guy. The guy came back with the wrong person, some Spanish-speaking or Italian-speaking character, the guy with the beard. And Friedkin flipped out because it turned out, he didn't want a sophisticated guy. He wanted a rough and tough, gangster guy. But what happened when they started shooting, because he had no choice, he had to shoot with the actor that he had. Suddenly there was this fantastic dichotomy between the rough and tumble, foul-mouthed Gene Hackman character and this very sophisticated European as the drug lord. And he went, I could not believe how well that worked. And he never envisioned that. So in amongst all the preparation you make, you also have to count on happy accidents.
And you also have to be a problem solver. Like that's what screenwriting and storytelling is
Yes.
that you're presenting a problem and solving it creatively. And that's Louis Beaumander, who is an acting teacher in one of my schools, said a random act of brilliance is something that you can't look for or create. It just happens, but you have to know when you can identify it. And that's usually it's through mistakes or it's through proper planning or something. It's completely random, but some sort of brilliant moment occurs. And if you don't seize on it, then you just missed the opportunity to actually do something great.
And you've got, so my final thing I'm saying here is that the Hollywood system, the way it's set up right now, is not conducive to good mistakes. It's only conducive to bad mistakes. Do you understand what I'm talking about? I mean, It's a subtle difference, but the Friedkin experience, it was conducive to a good mistake. all this checkboxing, all you're doing is heading down the wrong path. And you're not going to get any good mistakes. You're going to get Rachel Ziegler.
Right.
Exactly, because the conduciveness to good mistakes is the fact that they're trying to make something good based on what that thing is, not trying to manipulate what that thing is to fit something else.
Correct. There you go. End of polemic.
Culture.
Well, I think Zach's 100% right. I can't add more to what everybody else here has said. Everybody's had brilliant reactions so far. He's not wrong. I mean, we talked at length about, the fact that all of these items materially suffer because of lack of preparation at every level. And I don't know how else to, speak about that other than what everybody else here has said, especially Chris and Paul and Script. The garbage that we are getting is suffering under the weight of other factors, which we haven't mentioned here yet. And that doesn't, solve any of the problems that Hollywood has right now. But I don't think Zachary did anything but call out the industry for what it is. And I think that was very brave. Maybe the last thing he does in his career.
Well, they're already annoyed with him.
Yeah.
Because
but
he's committed the worst crime in Hollywood. He's a Christian, a devout Christian.
Well,
with a Jewish name.
Well,
and his second crime is being white. I mean, come on, Paul.
Oh, we're again going down the rabbit hole.
Don't forget he's male with an actual real penis.
That's the third crime. Yeah.
Yeah.
3 crimes.
Well, he does say a lot of really important things, but he also leaves an open question, which is, he says, don't go see garbage movies. Well, how do we find out what's garbage movies? Who can we trust? Because the critics we can't seem to trust, aside from Chris Gore and his recommendations. So how do we find out these are garbage movies if it's not already, and that as a result isn't too late because the studio's already got that opening box office weekend that they're pushing for anyway.
Why do you think they're scared of us?
I don't even think they really know us, but I mean, I can understand the point.
I would suggest that.
I don't mean us personally per se, but the idea of the YouTube
they don't
critic.
like it. They don't like it. It goes
as far as us personally. Oh yeah, we're definitely known in Disney and a few other places, but
it honestly flies in the face of the YouTubers. I will say, I'm not even going to include myself in that, but because I am, but I'm not of significance yet. But the
Mr. 10K here, listen to you.
No, but it's I'm a drop in the bucket compared to other people who have bigger voices, and they're absolutely terrified. They don't like people that are outside of the industry having any influence on anybody else. They just want you.
Right.
They just want people to take away what they tell them.
Oh, they don't like Nerdrotic.
No, I mean the bought and paid for shills that operate within the trades and some of the other websites out there like Collider and many more. I mean, you're looking at the bought off industry that they've cultivated a relationship with so that they can control them via the access that they receive. Well, none of us here benefit outside of maybe Chris from access or Script or I mean maybe Paul, but I don't have any access. I go and pay for everything that I see.
I have friends. I have friends.
True. I mean, when offered screeners, sometimes I'll take advantage of them, but oftentimes I won't, and I'll just go and see the film. I'd rather go and pay for something and have nothing dangling over my head, no sword of Damocles or anything else that would compel me to have a different opinion than I would honestly. I would come by honestly anyway. So
I have to say that I have had studio executives high up call me and go, "Is your fridge running? Well, you'd better catch it." And then they hang up. It's
did you at least get their caller ID so you can call them back and pitch them something?
They're using a burner.
Oh, that's too bad, because I would say that'd be great. You collect numbers to pitch them later, right?
That's right.
Be awesome. Yeah.
Damn those prank calls from studio execs.
Regardless, like I said, I think everybody here has said it all, and I think everybody here could agree. He's speaking truth to power. That takes courage.
Script.
Again, it's he's not wrong in his assessment. The fact of the matter is that how does the general audience figure out a way to discern what is garbage and what is not? Because again, advertising of films and trailers are all over the place. There's some great trailers of terrible movies and some terrible trailers of great movies, and then great trailers for great movies and bad trailers for bad movies. How does the general audience know what is good and what isn't without them already sacrificing the money that Hollywood is going to use and justify for their own success.
All right. Yeah,
That's the quandary, right? Like, I mean, he's
Yeah.
not wrong, but like that's the quandary. How do we elevate the audience's perception to recognize a dud or a wrong or a movie going into a wrong creative direction that is really just taking our money instead of actually rewarding us a proper exchange for entertainment and story and experience.
Yeah, it's pretty much it, and I agree with all the things you guys have said have been
Well, thank God for
on
that.
point,
Oh,
and
'cause it'd
I
be
can't
horrible
really
otherwise.
add too much more to it other than basically that. To answer Script's question, there is no real way to gauge what is or what isn't good.
Yep.
But it's a matter of, I think, not that Hollywood is ever going to do this, but again, we have gone through these things time and time again. All the things that we have said here are feeding into the facts. You have, first of all, most of these movies exist. Obviously, every movie exists to make money, but we've gone to a point where we've flip-flopped here as far as the kind of movies that are made and what's coming out of Hollywood. Go back 30 years, right? They generally didn't like to make a lot of sequels because they knew they weren't always going to be big hits. It wasn't until the superhero era where sequels were more profitable than the original films were. And that became the norm as opposed to the exception. And they got a taste of that. And that's where producers have been saying for years they'd love for these movies to go away, but the studios want them because they're the only things they can bank on year in and year out for the last 20 years almost now, to make them a big, huge payday every year, instead of taking a chance on a bunch of smaller movies in hopes that one would hit big, like a Sound of Freedom or a Joker, and basically pay for any mistakes they made throughout the year. And they never used to blame the audience for that. They used to say, oh, well, that was our fault. We're not going to do that again, or try to assess what the problem was. But, that's where a lot of people are worried about, like, well, if you don't watch Star Trek now, we're not going to get another one. Or if you don't watch Ninja Turtles now, we're not going to get another one. It's like, not in this day and age, maybe 30, 40 years ago. But this day and age, they'll just revamp it and start again because they don't know what else to do. They don't know how to be original anymore. They don't know how to create a movie star anymore, right? How many attempts have they had at trying to create the next Jai Courtney or exactly my point exactly. Like, we have not had a new movie star, arguably outside of maybe Chris Pratt. And you could only argue that the only reason he's probably a movie star is just because he's been so saturated. Yes, is he likable? Yes. But I have yet to see a situation where I could say, oh yeah, Chris Pratt's a movie star because he could sell a movie on his own, right? We don't have any Will Smiths anymore. Even Tom Cruise. And this is what I was saying a year and a half ago about this stuff, when I wasn't even sure after that whole business. I'm like, yeah, sure, Top Gun 2 did well. That doesn't mean Mission Impossible 7 is going to do well. That's the thing, is there is no movie stars anymore. So you can't bank on any of that kind of a thing. What do they have left? All they have left is the IP. And sooner or later, you can only do the same shit over and over and over and over again. I mean, we had an era where we had 2 superhero movies in a matter of like 10 years that weren't sequels. If you count Superman and Supergirl and Batman, it's 3 in a matter of a decade, roughly. Mm-hmm. Now we have that on a weekend.
Definitely a month for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but my point is, or hyperbolic. But yeah, the point is that, look, they've beat this drum so fucking hard and so to death that the audience is starting to pick out that this is the problem with the audience now, is the audience is much more savvy than they were. I mean, we were able to pick out cliches and things when we were younger, and even back when there was decent films coming out of Hollywood. But now it's like these are so paint by numbers that I can figure out most of these movies within the first 10 minutes of it, and it's like I'm wasting my time with this crap. And even if it does, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, sorry, Tom. It's just, I was just going to say, this whole blame the audience for not liking it, or you're racist or sexist, misogynist if you don't like it, or you just don't get it, or you see the really great filmmakers, they don't do that. In fact, they're more self-reflexive, right? Like, I could have done this differently, or this, or you know, it's always, I always appreciated Richard Linklater in my conversations with him over the years. He is really only interested in the negative reviews of his films because he says it's an opportunity for him to learn something. But Hollywood complaining, you know, and attacking the audience, it's ridiculous. It's like, look, and very famously, it was Domino's Pizza that did a campaign. We realize you don't like our pizza. We changed the formula for how we make our pizza. It was mainly consumed by drunk college kids, right? So the point is that I think people are waking up and saying, hey, you know what? I don't like your pizza. I'm not a bad person for not liking your pizza. Make better pizza, Hollywood. Make better movies.
I think
really
KFC is doing that with French fries right now. So yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It's so simple. Like, it's in the restaurant business, you don't blame your customer for not enjoying your food. You make better food. You make changes. You improve quality.
You know what that reminds me of, Chris?
Yeah.
It reminds me when I worked at Burger King and I was actually like in the upper management there, and they said something about how our chicken sandwiches were like one of our biggest sellers. I said, that's a problem. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, it doesn't say fucking Chicken King outside, does it? Well, and what I meant by that is that our burgers are doing so badly that our chicken is selling better. They didn't understand where I was coming from. Go ahead, Chris, you're about to say.
The chicken sandwich from Burger King is actually delicious.
It is, but that's not the point. My point was our burgers are that bad. Yeah.
So with the Frantics, and we toured across Canada, played to, I don't know, tens, maybe 100,000 people over our career. One of the things that we noticed when we were working with stand-ups initially at the stand-up clubs is just how quickly the stand-ups were willing to blame the audience for a bad set. And we made a decision really early on that we would never blame the audience, ever. And that worked out really well, because we would do a show and let's say it wasn't as good as we wanted it to be. We had very high standards. We would then go back, take a look at the tape, and see what we could do better. And I mean, that being said, you never know what the audience wants. So we did one show at one place where the audience wasn't laughing at all, and I came out on stage after 15 minutes, and I went, "Hey, folks, are you enjoying yourselves?" And everyone went, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, let me give you a hint. This smiling shit doesn't work at all for us. Okay, can you stop fucking smiling? Like you have a role to play in this show, and that is to laugh. If you don't laugh, then we don't know what to do. So I'm going to split you guys in half. This side start laughing, clapping. Okay, now this side. You guys are way better. You guys can leave." And so that got them laughing, warmed up, and then we did the rest of the show and we killed it. It wasn't that they weren't enjoying themselves. So yeah, never blame the audience. It's
stupid is because the audience is there to be entertained.
Exactly.
They're there to be receptive. To try and pretend that the audience, and this is what I hate about when people say that I go to a movie to hate it. It's like bullshit. Yeah. I have seen a million fucking movies. Not once do I watch a movie going, I want to hate this movie. I want a movie to surprise me. I would rather have walked out of Barbie or Mutant Mayhem going, oh my God, I can't believe Seth Rogen made a good Ninja Turtle movie.
Exactly. Why? No one does that. No one goes in wanting to hate something. You're sociopathic if that's
so half your job is already done as an entertainer. Your audience wants to be entertained. Now it's up to you. And that's where I also agree. Why is the audience suddenly blaming the audience to become a thing? The way you handled that is totally different, Paul, because that's what you do at a live event, and you could tell if the audience is not having fun. They're throwing shit at you, or they're booing, or they're jeering, or whatever. Right. But if you got no reception whatsoever, you're like, wait a minute, what now? What's going on here? That's a good way to handle it. In this case, though, the director can't come out and do that in the middle of a movie. But as you know, Script and I will get into arguments about certain movies and stuff sometimes, is you have to show the audience certain things. It is not the audience's fault if they don't get something. It's your fault for not conveying it well enough as a filmmaker. It is your job to show, not tell. It is your job to tell me what the fuck is going on. It is your job to tell me what I need to know. I shouldn't have to go read it in a comic book. I shouldn't have to go seek out a YouTube fucking video, Mr. Ridley Scott. I mean, he should know better. Right. Like, that's the thing that bothers me, too, is you even have stupid mistakes being made by veterans nowadays. And it's like, this is not what the movie going experience is about. The movie going experiences should be that I should be able to go into a theater, and once the lights go down and the movie comes up, it shouldn't matter what the movie is. I should be able to enjoy it for the most part. And am I going to always enjoy every movie? Fuck no. I have taste just like everybody else. Not everybody likes Pizza Hut or Domino's, like you just said, Chris. As far as Domino's changing their taste, they knew they had to fucking do something. Well, Hollywood needs to fucking do something. And I don't see them doing anything but putting everything on hold right now, and they're trying to starve out the creatives and the actors. And I don't think that's a solution. I mean, is getting rid of some of this shit that's garbage? Oh, absolutely is a solution. Getting rid of some of these people that are part of the problem, that's definitely part of the solution. But that's still not going to make good movies, right? You still have not allowed the floodgates to open up. We don't have any new indie voices anymore. Script and I have talked about this time and time again, and I know you've brought it up too, Chris. Like, when was the last time we had anybody? When you had, like, basically what, Eli Roth and a couple of those guys, Edgar Wright.
Well, I mean, you do.
That's the last time you really had any real independent guy.
Well, of the two there, yeah, Edgar Wright was actually talented. Eli Roth is, I don't know what the hell he is. He's a
no, but he was that last part of that last wave, is what I'm saying. But anyway, go ahead, Chris. You were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say I think it exists, but journalists are lazy, and so you know, when you're only covering the fact that Shazam 2 sucks or Blue Beetle sucks, you get the impression that all movies suck. That's not true. There are a lot of really good independent films and smaller movies. There's a movie called Talk to Me made by two YouTubers. Raka Raka, look them up. Two brothers from Australia made a horror film under $5 million. They somehow got the movie into Sundance. A24 bought it. It opened a couple weeks ago. Absolutely amazing horror film. There's smaller indie movies like this film Mad Heidi, which we talked about earlier. Can't argue with you that it's a great film, because it isn't. But is it a fun film? Fuck yeah, it's fun. So there are independent films out there. The mainstream media, and with all due respect to my colleagues on YouTube, YouTubers as well, don't cover these small indie movies that are worth your time. There are movies that are worth your time. There's a movie that opened last week. You know, Emilia Clarke just finished her run on Secret Invasion, which was awful. I mean, it was embarrassing. I didn't get past the first two episodes. Alan finished it. It's god-awful corporate garbage. Emilia Clarke also stars in a film.
But she had one really big arm.
She had a huge arm. I don't know how it got that way. I'm not going to speculate. But she's in a small indie movie called The Pod Generation that is about how fucked up things are when it comes to male-female relationships, when it comes to how we see genders, when it comes to birthing, when it comes to women being girl bosses in the workplace, and how that doesn't work. It's fascinating. It's a comment on now, but it's set in the future. I would put it in the category like that Joaquin Phoenix movie, Her. So all I'm saying is and also I'm not going to sit here and pretend all indie movies are great. More indie movies are bad than Hollywood films. It's just that Hollywood films have less of an excuse to fail.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe and join us.